Welcome back, everyone. So that was quite a great first session. And then we have another excellent one, trying to hear from 6 scientists and entrepreneurs working on great general solutions for brain health and mental health. Like before, we will hear from each of them 5 minutes, then have brief Q&As. And after we hear from the 6 of them, we will have popular votes to see who has impressed you, the audience, the most. And the first one, we're going to hear from Alfredo at Galgo Medical. Alfredo, the floor is yours.
So, hello, my name is Alfredo Higueras. So we had these very interesting talks in brain health, and we would like to talk about some areas of brain health where surgical intervention is required to ensure this health. So I would like to briefly present you the work we've been doing these last 5 years in Hospital del Mar, together with Galgo Medical, with a grant funded by Obras Sociales La Caixa, and more specifically, it's in the area of stereotactic neurosurgery, which is a kind of intervention where the clinicians select a very precise target deep inside the brain that they want to reach through a rectilinear trajectory. This can be used to diagnose epilepsy, to stimulate certain areas of the brain for movement disorders such as Parkinson, or for laser ablation with laser probe for tumor resection, for example. And they use robotics to transfer these trajectories to the OR. And that's a great improvement, but there's a great lack in the planning with many preoperative imaging involved, some providing bone structure, another giving idea of where are the vessels, and you also get soft tissue from MRI, nuclear medicine imaging, and to take the best decision, we built a software which runs on top of a CIS-based platform, which is a kind of virtual reality display that allows for collaboration and open discussion, where the clinicians can see all this information and take the best decisions and take the most efficient and safer approaches to these targets. And there are other players also in the market who has taken the approach of using virtual reality headset displays for this kind of task. We believe that's not a good idea because there are a number of issues. The first thing is that you need collaboration among different specialties, so this prevents easy communication. And the other thing is that the planning sessions can take up to 6 hours, so they have to wear these devices for a long time. So apart from this visualization, we've also provide clinicians with algorithms for specific parts of the digitalized workflow. One of them is this patent pending algorithm that can test up to 500,000 trajectories in less than a minute to find a vascular path to provide safer interventions. So the idea is that now we want to spin off this department of neurosurgery from within Galgo Medical and create a new company with a number of individuals like Ignacio Delgado, which is a clinician and a researcher, and is acting as the link between the research and the hospital. And also a couple of developers that we have based in Singapore who are working in the visualization and 3D interaction. And then we also, outside the working team, but also very pushing for this project with a deep love for it, we have a chief neurosurgeon of the Hospital del Mar, Gerardo Conesa, with renowned, international renown and vast experience in this kind of intervention. We also count with Visera, who has over 30 years of experience developing neurosurgical software. And also Tony Rio, who has launched several startups here in Barcelona and the medtech area in the last years. So this device is currently in use in the Hospital del Mar, and it's now routinely used, and we plan with a new grant to extend its use to other places in the social security system in Spain, and we also have contacts in Argentina and in USA. And what we are looking now at this stage is for the the last part of the next year, we would like to scale up the business, especially for the regulatory and the sales area. So that's what we are here pitching for. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you need further details, you can contact me in this email address. Thank you very much.
Alfredo, thank you very much for the great overview and for being right in time. So super. Now time for the jury to jump in with questions and comments.
Thank you, Alfredo. Very, very good presentation. I have a question about your competitors. Can you just briefly define who are your competitors also, I mean, in the commercial field and also in the development areas, and what is your competitive advantage towards them?
So we've located like 3 different areas of competitors. One, of course, is continue doing business as usual. So they would use suboptimal things for planning. Another one comes from academia, so they are things that are not easy to use and they have no regulatory approval. And then specifically in the market, we have some competitors that they are using these VR goggles, and they come from the military sometimes, and they have an approach that we believe is not right for the things I mentioned, that it prevents communication. I don't know what else we will have to go into the details to say specifically what's different, why we believe our solution is the right one. I don't know if I answered your question or you want further details. Maybe.
Can you maybe provide an example how this would work? In what particular scenario of use do you think this would have a very significant impact?
Sure. Well, it does already have an impact, because you have a number of individuals who have to take a decision to act in a piece of your brain. If they miss by a small amount of some millimeters, they can have very severe consequences. But also if they miss, it may be not effective also. No? So some professionals are experts in knowing what's the area of the brain to stimulate. Others are responsible for taking you there without mitigating surgical risk. Other ones are experts in imaging, and they are lacking a good device where they can mix all that knowledge together and take the best decisions. No? And we are seeing that already, that we are substituting paper for epilepsy specifically, and also for laser ablation, for tumor resection.
Thank you. Any other question, Marjorie?
Yeah, maybe. Hi, Alfredo. Thanks for your presentation. I am Daniela from Medicine, and my question is: what is your main barrier in your scale-up strategy?
Pardon me. What is
your main risk and your main barriers in your scale-up strategy for 2021?
Well, we are a young company. We're not even a company now. We are a department, so risk all over. And I've worked 5 years in risk assessment in banking, and we can analyze risk. But I think that if we go into this adventure, it's because we believe that there is this need in the market. When we talk to clinicians, they tell us that they want to have this device in their hands, so they are pulling from us, and that's what makes us go forward. No? There are many risks that could happen. But we believe in this solution.
Quick question before we move on to IFTAH. Why the name Galgo?
So actually, Galgo comes from it's like the parent company, and I joined it a bit later. So I think I cannot answer for that, but I know a Galgo has 4 legs, and we are the 4th leg in this company. So maybe that has something to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alfredo.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. And now we will hear from IFTAH, who will have to pronounce the name of the company, because I'm not sure if it's Quantalx or Quantix, but
Quantalx.
Excellent, thank you. So we'll hear a brief video, and then the mic is yours.
So, can you hear me? Just let me know you hear me and everything is fine, and I'll start.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so First of all, very exciting to be part of this event, so thank you very much. My name is Iftach, and in the next 5 minutes, I'll present you with Delphi, the first clinically approved system for routine brain health evaluation. Over 14% of world population suffers from age-related brain disorders, such as Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, Parkinson's disease, stroke, and so on. This, of course, leads to the medical world's biggest unmet need and the huge associated economic burden. Yet, it is well established that the majority of these age-related brain abnormalities, as 90% of strokes and 35% of dementias, can actually be prevented, or at least delayed significantly if detected early enough at a physiological state of progression, as seen in the graph below. So if it's detected in the early physiological state, but not at the late deterioration of pathological deterioration, as seen in the graph in the green box, as diagnosed today at the very late stage of progression. And this is exactly the reason why physicians today in the United States are required to evaluate the brain health of their patients over the age of 65 at least once a year. However, these physicians actually, they don't have any tools to actually evaluate the brain, the early physiological stages of brain abnormalities, age-related brain abnormalities that they actually should evaluate. The only available tools today are mainly imaging tools, which are simply inappropriate or not sufficient for evaluating and detecting these early physiological changes, and are simply, of course, irrelevant, leaving the majority of age-related brain disorders to be diagnosed by a subjective physician assessment or all kind of cognitive tests at best. And this is exactly what led us to develop Delphi. Delphi is the first objective, highly reproducible, patient-independent clinical tool for the real-time assessment of brain health. Delphi is a non-invasive electrophysiology system that uses magnetic stimulation and monitoring to provide physicians with real-time, well-established physiological properties of brain functions as network connectivity, coherence, and brain plasticity, enabling the early detection of these specific physiological age-related brain abnormalities. Delphi is already clinically available and approved for the use in Europe and in Israel, and will soon be approved by the FDA for the use in the United States. The comprehensive clinical work performed with Delphi to date, including over 5,000 patients to date in a number of clinical sites, focused on age-related brain disorder, such as cerebral small vessels disease, which is generally the most common age-related disease, which leads to, and most commonly leads to either a stroke or dementia, and differentiating using Delphi between different kinds of dementias, stroke, and Parkinson's disease. And as can be seen here, you can also see the publications that were the results of these specific studies that were conducted using Delphi. The Delphi system is completely automatic and does not require any participation from the patient side or any specific training from the technician. The total evaluation takes about 20 minutes and the results are presented to the physician in real time. So here are two examples of dashboard pictures of the summary results of the Delphi evaluation process. So actually, these are only the summary results. Of course, the comprehensive report is much longer, but here you can see on the left, of course, the personal details of the patients are blurred. On the right, you can see the physiological properties that were evaluated. On the right, the connectivity index, including the actual physiological properties and their values compared to norms in the age-related norms of the patients in population, and the plasticity measure, again, normalized to healthy norms. In this case, is the case of cerebral small vessels disease, a very common, again, disorder that we see many times in the clinic. Generally, I can tell you that about 30% of the people above the age of 60 that come to one of our clinics to evaluate their brain health under the assumptions that they are healthy, we do see early signs of cerebral small vessels disease. And on the contrary, a different example of a person that underwent stroke in the right hemisphere, the CVA in this case. Today, Delphi is the only clinically, scientifically proven available tool for objective, patient-independent evaluation of brain health, aiding the physician in the diagnostic purpose. Delphi is, as I said, already approved for the use in Europe and in Israel, and will soon be approved for the use in the United States. Our vision is that Delphi will become the next EKG for routine brain health monitoring, and in the next few years, we see Delphi as the main global tool for diagnostics and routine brain health monitoring, providing the physicians with objective and meaningful insights. And I invite you all to reach me afterwards and see how you can integrate Delphi into your everyday clinical work, using Delphi to improve the outcome of your patient's healthcare, and use it yourself in your research and for evaluating your brain health routinely. Our brain is the most important organ we have, especially as we age. Take care of it using Delphi. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Iftach. And now we have, as you know, quick Q&A session, and I'm sure we have great questions ready. Who wants to jump first?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. So I have a question regarding to try to better understand how this works. So you use TMS pulses, and you deliver the TMS pulses always at the same place, at the same site, irrespective of the condition that you aim to, let's say, diagnose?
Mm-hmm. So the system is completely automatic. So the protocol is a fixed protocol, regardless of the age and the condition. It doesn't require any patient participation. So basically, the protocol is completely automatic. You place the system on the patient's head, and the evaluation starts automatically. The protocol, with the stimulation, the pinging, we call it the pinging of the system is automatic, simulates specific hubs over the neuronal network, and measuring or monitoring the response of the specific TMS evoked potentials. Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too.
Okay.
Will the physician need to run other complementary tests or diagnosis with this?
That's a wonderful question. So to date, the system is approved for the use as a diagnostic aiding tool. So most of the clinics that use the system, because they don't have any other relevant tools to evaluate brain health, actually use only the system. If a person comes to the clinic with the complaints of memory decline or any other cognitive changes, it's very easy for the physician to place the system on the person's head. The person closes his eyes. In many cases, he falls asleep, and the system just gives in real time the results. It doesn't require any additional information. I can tell you that there is a very high correlation between the results of the system with any kind of cognitive change, and of course with any observations seen in an MRI, CT. It's of course, it does not say that mean that the system will replace an MRI in any case. It does not, because it's a physiological, very reproducible.
Thank you so much, Iftach. My computer is free, so I just missed a little bit of your answers, but everything seems to work well. We're back in business. And now we're going to welcome Guillem from the Universitat de Barcelona. After a brief video, the mic will be yours, Guillem.
Okay, thank you. My name is Guillem Feixas. I am here to present you Amy, Explore Your Meanings, created by Mind and Identity, a spin-off of the Universitat de Barcelona. We all know that mental health is a key concern area for all humanity. The World Health Organization says there is no health without mental health. And psychotherapy is a fine way for addressing mental health and promoting well-being without side effects. Psychotherapies, for their psychological assessment, use mainly questionnaires and tests. But these instruments have great limitations. They are based on normative samples, which might be very different from the particular patient that the psychotherapist has to assist. We propose AMI as an assessment system devised to promote self-discovery and immersive exploration of intended changes using a virtual reality platform. AMI uses an interactive digital interview for the elicitation of the characteristics that patients use to evaluate themselves and others. AMI will assist mental health clinicians in their practice with a user-friendly platform that will help them to personalize and target their treatment to a specific changes of the self-identity system of their clients. We know now that self-identity issues are transdiagnostic and are involved in virtually all kinds of psychological distress and mental disorder. Our business plan is a B2B. Our clients will be the psychotherapists, dozens of thousands of psychologists and psychiatrists providing service to their clients. Our model is the software as service and software model with a subscription. We will include proficient training pack for our clinicians become capable of applying AMI in an effective way. We will also provide certification programs for these psychotherapies. Our financial needs at the moment are not huge, based mainly on commercialization, because the technical aspects of our product are already very advanced. And I have the pleasure to introduce Montse Sánchez, founder and CEO of Mind and Identity. She was also founder and CEO of It's a Specialist in Mental Health, which is a big organization in mental health now in Spain, with 24 units of interdisciplinary treatment units. And I am a full professor at the University of Barcelona, and I hope you will consider AMI as an attractive proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Guillem, for that great overview and work. And now we have time for questions from the jury. Anyone, please jump in.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, Guillem. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. I think this is timely for the field of psychology. But can you please explain a bit more what would be the subjects or the patient's perspective when he or she puts the virtual reality glasses that you've shown? Exactly what is the kind of navigation that he or she is faced to and the decisions that need to be made? That would be interesting. Thank you.
Okay, our outputs are a written report, a 3D display which can be seen on a screen together with along with the psychotherapist, and also the virtual reality environment, which is the one you were asking about. In all these two contexts, what the client or the patient is seeing is all the relevant people in their life, so it's construing self and others, and including themselves, and which are the characteristics that they are using to articulate, to structure their world. So they will see their mental maps outside their head. They will be there, they will be experiencing their ideas, their thinking. This morning, a presenter was talking about the importance of thinking, of repetitive negative thinking. Well, they will explore how their thinking is in very much detail, in a very personalized way. they're thinking about their father, their mother, their partner, their relatives, the relevant people in their lives, and how they structure this interpersonal world in which psychotherapy can take place.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Guillem. Álvaro, do you see this mostly as a diagnostic tool or as a treatment tool, or somehow those two, to be able to match potential interventions to potential problems?
It is not strictly a diagnostic system because it doesn't provide a diagnostic category. It is more a psychological assessment, which in the process it can become a powerful intervention in itself, because self-awareness is one of the main objectives of psychological assistance. So understanding better yourself is one of the best ways to get out of your problems. So this understanding is not provided by a jargon of a psychological theory, but is done in the very same terms that the patient is using to understand himself, herself, or others.
Thanks.
I have a question, if I may. Thank you for the presentation, Guillem. So I understand you are using this device for testing it among different profile of users, some maybe with mental health problems, some maybe without them. I wanted to understand what is the user experience, because putting these immersive glasses in, some people may be discomfort, so that there are different experiences. I wanted to check if you have, from your user experience tests, what has been the feedback, and especially if you can see also differences in the experience from people with certain mental conditions or not, that you think is suitable for all possible target groups. Thank you.
Yes, well, the main responsibility of the use of AMI lies on the professional using it. So we want to train professionals to see AMI as an assistance tool, something to assist them in their work. So they have to make a good judgment whether putting the virtual reality glasses is a good idea. And we advise first to look at this interpersonal wall, this mental map, using the 3D display in the screen of a computer. And then if the patient is able to understand what is going there, what is going on, then maybe provide them the virtual reality glasses. So the virtual reality is like a last step, but not a necessary one. We think that for adolescents and some particular populations, virtual reality will be a great interest, even when psychotherapy is not very interesting, because for some people that is not a face-to-face kind of thing, which is not very interesting. For some adolescents, that will have a great degree of interest. I don't think the disorder will be a key factor. Instead, for other people, it will be not a very interesting addition to what they can work with the psychotherapist, even using the 3D representation in the screen, which can be navigated with the mouse.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The psychotherapist has to decide. Sorry.
No, thank you so much, Guillem.
Okay.
And now we're going to move on to the next pitch, and we're going to hear from Laszlo, working on brain gaze after the little introductory video.
So thanks very much for the opportunity. I'll start the presentation now. So I'm Laszlo Bax. I should now get here. So meet Jack. He's 62 years old, and Jack is worried he's starting to forget things. He's afraid he's developing the first stages of Alzheimer's disease. Meet Tommy. His parents think his mood swings might come from ADHD, but they don't want him taking amphetamines on a daily basis at this age.
Today, there are 50 million people worldwide diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and there's 12 million people worldwide diagnosed with ADHD. Both ADHD and Alzheimer's have something in common. They both have their origin in a small nucleus deep inside the brain. And for both, there's a big benefit in catching the problem early, before symptoms occur. But today, early detection involves expensive procedures such as PET scans, spinal fluid taps, or questionnaires which are unreliable, time-consuming, and subjective. We are BrainGaze. We're a digital health company solving some of the biggest problems around neurocognitive disorders. And our systems involve very small, involuntary eye movements triggered by carefully designed video games. These eye movements are controlled in the small nucleus, the same part of the brainstem that drive ADHD and Alzheimer's disease. We, but also others, have published over 20 peer-reviewed papers on this science in leading journals. Numerous experts have clinically validated our findings in over 13 clinical trials involving over 1,300 patients. And our technology is protected by a granted patent, so we got blanket coverage worldwide. So let me tell you how this works. Patients find us through our partner clinics or on health platforms, and to do the BrainGaze early detection check, the patient performs a simple task right on their smartphone. We track their eye movements with the selfie cam and analyze the eye movement patterns. Typical healthy cases like the blue line. Pre-symptomatic stages of Alzheimer's are the yellow line, and an advanced stage of Alzheimer's looks like the red line. BrainGaze is more accurate than interviews or scans. The app automatically generates a brief report in minutes instead of hours. Patients that might have Alzheimer's disease or ADHD are referred to a doctor who uses our clinical diagnostics test system to confirm or reject. Confirmed, then the doctor can prescribe digital therapy to reduce symptoms. So BrainGaze gets paid directly by the patient for each online test, where they use our therapy games to reduce symptoms. We also get paid by clinics that offer our clinical test system, giving us a recurring revenue every month. So we outperform traditional and new competition in terms of ease of use and neurobiological relevance. My co-founder Hans and I, we complement each other. So I'm the entrepreneur. I founded and scaled several tech companies, one of them actually in the mobile healthcare space, exited by industry acquisition. And Hans is the visionary scientist who published in the highest ranking journals in neurobiology. We're joined by two pharma industry veterans. Ed van der Logt worked as a product strategist for Glaxo Wellcome and IMS Health. And Ana Lopez is an expert in pharma sales that planned and managed one of the most successful drug launches of Roche in Spain. Our advisory board covers the clinical side of things, and these are all key opinion leaders in their fields. We have already delivered diagnostic test systems to 25 clinics and hospitals in Europe. We started billing them monthly for treatment systems as well. We hit 200,000 euros of revenue last year, 2019. And we're driving a clear pipeline of products towards regulatory approval and market entry. At the moment, we're raising 1.5 million euros to perform 2 pivotal clinical trials, complete the development of our consumer platform, and expand the team and our partnerships. So yeah, I look forward to setting up a time to talk about how our digital solutions can replace questionnaires, brain scans, and drugs for ADHD and Alzheimer's. Thank you.
Laszlo, thank you so much for that overview. Before I ask the jury to ask more questions, I have a quick one because you shared 2019 revenues. Can you give us an update on this year, which has been very complex, but I'm curious about what is happening this year and what you predict for next year?
Yeah, so we have definitely been hurt this year because of basically our systems, the ones that generate revenue today, are in clinic. We used 2020 to develop, or basically to fast track the development of the solutions that run on mobile phones or tablets, which do not require any hardware. But what we have generating revenue in 2019, in 2020 wasn't used that much as it was in 2019 because of the fact that patients weren't going to these clinics. We have a pay-per-test model in the diagnostics, so we see exactly how many patients are seen. So we saw when the first confinement hit, poof, we went to 0, and then we went to something close to normal, then it was summer holidays, and then we got back into confinement. So 2020 has been pretty rough on us on this clinical turnover. We got some other, let's say, contract research in to compensate a bit for that. But,
what about next year?
Next year looks a lot better. Of course, depending a little bit on when clinicians can go back to actually receiving patients in their clinic. And on the other hand, the other thing that we are ramping up, the completely mobile platform, which will allow our clinical clients to actually offer treatment games in the home. That's something these clinicians are really like pushing us and dragging it out of our hands of, okay, we want this now, because they are very, very eager to get solutions where they can prescribe a digital game which runs on a mobile phone of, for example, an ADHD suffering kid. So for now, for the moment, we had always to use an eye tracker, which was kindly, kind of obliging them to offer this game in their clinic. With our recent developments where you can do this on a mobile phone, it becomes something that we had actually planned for later, but we needed to push this out because it's something that is, for today, and I would say for the next 6 months, crucial for clinicians.
Thank you. So now more questions from the jury.
I have a question, Laszlo. So I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're doing. I mean, of course, so in the case of Alzheimer's disease, there are many specific physiopathological markers and many degrees of the condition from the preclinical to the clinical stages. So you're saying that with the eye tracking system, gaze tracking, you're able to diagnose the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. This is only with this test or combined with other clinical and biological information?
No, basically it's our test. So we did a clinical trial together with Sanitas, with their neurology department, in total involving some 78 subjects, which were roughly 1/3 healthy, 1/3 MCI, so mild cognitive impairment, 1/3 Alzheimer's disease. And basically the neurologist did the full neurology diagnosis, which in most cases did not include PET scans and spinal tests, but it did include MRI and a few, let's say, cognitive exploration by a neurologist. And they did our 5-minute test. And basically in the validation, we correlated what the 5-minute test said with what the neurologist said after hours of exploration. And in 92% of the cases, our test standalone coincides with the neurology conclusion. And what's interesting to see is that it's not just the classification between 3 groups, but if people scored on a high score indicator, so a high number on our test, it's actually what we now see in the first longitudinal data that's coming out of that collaboration. We see that the ones that scored higher in MCI are now actually progressing to Alzheimer's disease. So it's a continuum. The parameter that we measure is a continuum that kind of reflects the cognitive performance.
So the clinical syndrome. Okay. And then you also mentioned about that you are, if I understood well, that you are being asked to use this as I would not say treatment, but perhaps to stimulate then. And you put the example in ADHD, but in the case of dementia is also the same. What would this work like?
This is, so we have done a small scale validation study on ADHD therapy. Let's call it that for now, until we got a bigger clinical trial, then we can call it treatment. But for now, we call it therapy. So with an N of 28, 14 with our treatment, 14 controls, we got on average 56% reduction in key markers of ADHD in children. We have quite serious reasons to believe that a similar effect could be obtained in dementia or Alzheimer's patients, but we have no clinical data today. That's actually why we're raising money. The two clinical trials we want to do are, on the one hand, the ADHD treatment increase substantially the number of subjects, and in MCI and Alzheimer's detection have a larger amount of subjects, but also include a leg in that clinical trial where we look at reducing symptoms of Alzheimer's and MCI through the use of games that interact with eye movements. And I must say there's an increasing body of evidence around this correlation between the locus coeruleus, which controls eye movements, the fact that this is called the ground zero of Alzheimer's, where Alzheimer's begins to develop. And this correlation is what we exploit fundamentally.
Thank you so much, Laszlo, for your time with us. And now we're going to hear from Keere Therapeutics and Laurent. And it seems they're telling me, the producers, that Laurent, that maybe there's a different way for you to display the slides.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes, bonjour. It's my pleasure to present what we are doing at Keere. We are going to talk about drug development. The context today in CNS is pretty clear. It's the right time for a dry biotech. We all know about the needs. CNS disorders are causing disabilities, and we don't manage to control them really right now. There has been a huge effort in the science to understand better the biology, and now we have a lot of very interesting avenues for drug development. And clearly the marketplace is ready for new product. Looking at the level of the amounts raised through Series A, B, C, and already the first M&A deals that we have seen over the past few years, clearly it's the right time because the market is waiting for the biotech sector to provide new drugs. So what we have been doing is basically earlier this year to create a new R&D engine called Keere Therapeutics. And we have been launching this new company by merging two Spanish companies, two Spanish biotech operating in CNS. And we also raised a Series A round of 7.6 million euros, led by Alta Life Science and CDTI in Spain. And what we have been doing clearly is to create a new translational R&D engine. What does it mean, translational? Is to develop compounds from late preclinical development and move them into clinics and prove the concept right in patients. So we have formed a team, we have formed a company, and you can imagine that we have gathered all the experiences that we need for running this kind of adventure. And each executive in the team has more than 20 years experience of pharma, biotech, or coming from academia. And we have been working for companies that are clearly operating in the CNS sector. Paul, Lucia, Pablo, and myself, we are leading the team, and we have project directors with us. We are operating in an ecosystem that is a biotech type of ecosystem with a lot of good advisors. And here you have an example of some of the advisors we have, basically key opinion leaders operating in a major university and hospital across the world, and all having been involved in different clinical trials that led to the products that are currently on the market. So these are the guys really are forming they have formed the existing armamentarium, and they will be forming and they will be forging the next generation of compounds that will help biotech like us. So I'm talking about Steve Hauser, Larry Steinman, Amit Bar, Larry Hirsch, Jose Obeso, coming from UCSF, Stanford, UPenn, Sinai, Madrid, or Yale University. So what we aim to do is to provide the market with new, and the patients and the doctors in the market with new drugs that will be disease modifier, A disease modifier is not a symptomatic treatment. The disease modifier is working on the underlying biology leading to the disease. And by doing so, the hope is to bring game changer drug that will be able to slow down or stop the progression of the disease, the progression of the disabilities for CNS indication that really deserve and needs these kind of new products. To give you an example of what we are doing, I'm going to talk about our first product, ACT1. It's a new chemical entity, and this product is activating neurotrophic signaling pathways. As you may know, your healthy brain needs neurotrophic factors in order to operate daily activity of the cells, in order to repair, or in order to survive. Under certain stress condition, for instance, what is represented here in the middle, multiple sclerosis is an immune disorder leading to inflammation, and this inflammation is disrupting the homeostasis of the brain in different parts of the brain, and that leads to demyelination of the neurons, inability to remyelinate, axonal loss, neuronal loss, leading to disabilities. So what ACT1 is doing, basically, is helping to restore the local homeostasis, acting on a mode of action that is totally different from what exists on the market today, which is targeting inflammation and immunomodulation. So what does it lead to? As you may know, in drug development, we first study the hypothesis in vitro, in test tubes, and then in animals, and then we move into man. So first step is in animal, we are testing the hypothesis is, can you do better than the current anti-inflammatory drugs that are on the market? Here is an example of where we create an encephalomyelitis in a mice. And after have injecting toxin and antigens, after 2 weeks, the animal will develop an encephalomyelitis and will start to have disabilities like unilateral limb paralysis, going to bilateral limb paralysis, and even more. So here, you start to treat after 2 weeks when you have the disease in place, and then you look for the next 2 to 3 weeks what's happening. So with the current marketed immunomodulator, you can stop the disease at a level 2 to 3 in this scale. With this product, adding our product, we can go beyond that. So here, clearly, we are shooting for improving the level of efficacy of the current treatment on the market. So next step for us is going to...
And Laurent, I believe you have to wrap up, if you don't mind.
Okay. The next step is to... Next slide. It's not functioning. I don't know why. Yes. It's simply the next step is to go into phase 2, and we are currently testing in patients. We have 2 other programs that are in earlier phase of development and also targeting very specific and unique mode of action in Parkinson's disease and epilepsy. And basically, the summary is that we are private, VC-backed, transnational R&D engine. We are pushing 3 programs that we hope to be disease modifier. And now we're preparing for the next round of financing, Series B. So if you're interested in what we are doing, please come and talk to us to join our journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurent. And the jury can jump in with questions in a second. My first question is, this year, have you been able to conduct trials, or have the COVID situation interrupted your development for 6 months or longer? How have you been able to conduct trials?
Yes. So the answer is yes. We are implementing the trials as we speak in the Paris Hospital Group, in the reference center of Hôpital La Pitié-Salpêtrière. And we've got the green light from the Paris Hospital Group to continue the trial. As you may know, many hospitals, they give priority to COVID-related trials. But since we are dealing with a very serious disease, they said, yes, you're authorized to continue to implement and recruit patients. So the study is ongoing as we speak.
Thank you. Now anyone can jump in.
Okay, I have a question. The most advanced lead, the ACT1, pursued 2 different indications. Will the respective trial be separate in time, or how you foresee to do that? And the other question is if you have some preclinical data for the optic neuritis indication.
Yes, so we have selected optic neuritis as an indication because 2 reasons. The first one is the biology is common to many causes of optic neuritis, including multiple sclerosis. So basically, we have generated preclinical data using, for instance, a run-out model where you inject a toxic called isolecithin, and we could prevent the deterioration, the neurodegeneration that is occurring in this model. So we are now moving into optic neuritis, which is in most of the case, it's a local optic nerve manifestation of multiple sclerosis. So that's why by entering through optic neuritis, we aim to demonstrate that the product would be active in any optic neuritis patient. And second, would be more particularly active in patients presenting with an acute condition, which is optic neuritis. But as I said, probably more than 2/3 of the patients we are going to recruit, they have most likely an underlying multiple sclerosis disease that can impact the optic nerve region, but that can impact other parts of the brain.
We have time for one very quick question, if someone has it. Okay, well, Laurent, I think we have too many big questions, so it's time to have a brief one to be continued.
You have the address email.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we're going to get ready to hear from the last presenter today, Rubén at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. And like before, we'll have a brief video, and then Rubén, the mic will be yours.
Hello.
Yes,
Good afternoon.
here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start this speech with just a small question, and it's how many of you have a relative suffering from a neurological condition? And the answer is that probably most of you have a relative with these conditions, because estimations really state that there are about 300 million people worldwide diagnosed with some of this condition. And the worst is that it's expected that in the next 20 years, the number of the prevalence of this patient will raise in a 20% more. So that means that some of us will be diagnosed in the future with a neurological condition if this has not occurred yet. So we are interested in developing new therapeutic approach for neurological condition, and in particular for spinal cord injury, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and multiple sclerosis. You know that these conditions lead to devastating effects in the patient that unfortunately are suffering from these pathologies. But and I'd like to highlight that in contrast to patients with Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease, they affect mainly young and middle-aged people. And there is no cure for them right now. There are some drugs that can attenuate some of the signs of MS and ALS, but for instance, for spinal cord injury, there is no treatment at all. So there is a need now to develop revolutionary approaches to treat such conditions. And although the etiology of these conditions is very different and diverse, they all share a common pathological feature, that it's the hyperinflammation that is occurring in the central nervous system. And we all know that inflammation is a physiological process that aims to combat injuries and infections. But however, some aspects of this inflammation cause unwanted tissue damage. And this has a special relevance in the CNS because it's limited capacity for the replacement of damaged neurons and oligodendrocytes, and for the limited capacity of axonal regeneration. And this is also more important when inflammation does not resolve on time, as is occurred in the CNS. For that reason, inflammation is like one of the main targets for treating the neurological conditions, at least at the experimental scenario. And although we have plenty of anti-inflammatory drugs that they are effective for treating acute inflammation, they fail they have limited efficacy in conditions where inflammation is persistent in the periphery, but also in the nervous system, suggesting that there is a need to look for new strategies to modulate this inflammatory response. In the last years, there have been many studies focused on how inflammation resolves on tissues, and they have identified a family of molecules named SPMs that they switch off inflammation. We have analyzed these SPMs in the CNS of animal models of MS, spinal cord injury, and ALS, but also in individuals suffering from these conditions. And we have found that the production of these SPMs is insufficient. So that means that maybe the excessive inflammation in the CNS in this pathological condition is a consequence of this deficient production of SPMs. So what we are trying to do here is to provide this resolution agonist, not to reduce the magnitude of inflammation, just to induce the resolution of inflammation. And we have shown efficacy of this treatment in animal models of spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, and also in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And in this case, the result is more efficacy than the real result that it's the gold standard treatment for these patients. So, and that means that we are using a novel way to modulate inflammation that tries to mimic the natural responses of the organism to switch off this physiological action. In the way that the main difference with current anti-inflammatory therapies is that we don't want to reduce the infiltration of the leukocytes into the CNS because they are already there. What we are trying to do is to stimulate the clearance of these leukocytes and to inhibit this activation. And another important difference with these therapies with the anti-inflammatory is that they are not immunosuppressive. And this is very important. So we think it's time to challenge the current treatment practices based on inhibitors of inflammation by using these SPMs. And indeed, we are doing the preclinical and non-regulatory development because we raise money from competitive calls from Fundación La Caixa. We expect we'll have this preclinical, non-regulatory preclinical development in 2021. But our aim is to bring this new therapy to the clinic, and for this we need funds to do the preclinical regulatory studies and as well as clinical trial, phase 1 clinical trial. Okay, we have a regulatory roadmap that estimates that we'll need about 3 million euros to reach the aim. That of course can be a first step to change the lifestyle of millions of people who are suffering from these conditions worldwide. So I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me and to highlight the team that it's basically done by scientists and by neurologists, but also we have the support of the business team and from the University Autónoma of Barcelona. So thank you so much, and I will be happy to take some questions.
So, Yuri, which questions may you have?
Well, I can have one. Hi, Ruben. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Hi.
I just have a question regarding the difference between ALS, MS, and especially spinal cord injury. Indeed, you are addressing the resolution of inflammation, but in the case, especially in the case of a spinal cord injury, you indeed has the injury. So what would you expect about the effects of this resolution of the inflammation on the injury?
Yeah, so in the laboratory, we have several research lines working on these molecules on different conditions. And particularly for the spinal cord injury, I have to say that this is just to treat acute spinal cord injury. Because we know that the neurological impairment caused by the trauma itself are due by basically two phases. One of them is the direct injury itself into the spinal cord. You cannot avoid that. Usually it's a car accident. You can avoid that car accident, but once you have the damage, you cannot avoid this damage, this primary damage. But we know now that this primary damage triggers a cascade of neurodegenerative events that occurs basically during the first 1 or 2 weeks after the injury itself. And inflammation has an important contribution. So we are trying to block this, not to block, to resolve this inflammation that occurs excessively during this first stage of the injury itself. However, those patients that have already been suffering this pathology for several months and all the secondary damage events has already gone, of course, this therapy is not for them. It's just for the first hours of days after the injury.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Simon has a very quick question before we wrap up, or any jury has a quick question? Well, then let's wrap up. Ruben, thank you so much for your speech and for your answers.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. And now, having heard again from 6 great approaches and 6 great startups and presenters, we're going to watch a brief video to remember who they all are, and then we'll proceed to vote.
And our company develops minimally invasive planning technologies to ensure safe access to targets inside the brain.
And I invite you all to reach out for further information on how you can use Delphi in your everyday clinical work, evaluating your brain health.
I brought you Amy, Explore Your Meanings, a technological platform created to assist psychotherapists to achieve better results with their patients.
And I told you about digital health, deep tech, disrupting neurocognitive disorder, detection, diagnostics, and treatment.
Thanks for listening to the presentation. As a summary, I think the major points I would like to stress are that we are at Keere, a new R&D engine dedicated to CNS at clinical stage.
And I just present you a paradigm shift in the way of how to treat inflammation in order to prevent the neurological deficits of neurological disorders.
And then I think the producers will let us know. They will show a brief video, and then they will show the results because they need a few seconds to compile all the numbers. So producers, if you want to share that video, we're ready for you.
Even the biggest ideas start small. Those light bulb moments only become life-changing solutions when they have the brightest minds backing them. EIT Health powers up this innovation and entrepreneurship in health to meet the needs of our society. Driven by the rise of chronic disease and pressures of an aging population, our work is helping to solve some of the biggest health challenges in Europe. How? Our network spans the worlds of business, education, research, and health service delivery to connect smart ideas with the smartest minds across borders. This unique ecosystem initiates new thinking and helps ideas take shape, whether that's a product or service, a startup, or by nurturing health innovators. Together, we're reimagining healthcare for healthier lives in Europe.
I was impressed and very happy to be part of this panel. These were very interesting projects and particularly focusing in a very demanding and clinically and socially aspect. So they have a clear target in their mind of what is needed, which is fantastic. And then there is this compromise between the high risk but achievable in a lot of them. So I think this allows to move forward clearly. And as was said before, there is complementary aspects. For instance, the ones that could combine the testing the ambulances with the CT scans without contrast to even speed up the diagnosis of certain strokes. Things like this that could be combined. I agree. There's positive overlapping.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, in the same aspect, I would like to congratulate all these projects and these very, very nice presentation. I think that demonstrate that our ecosystem, the bioregion of Catalonia and Europe and other countries are ready to move forward with all these outstanding projects. So congratulate to all the speakers.
And we have time
Yes,
for one or two more comments. We can already wrap the comments. No, sorry, the voting. So the voting, please finish. You haven't, and then but then we have still time for a couple of more people to comment.
I want just to also to join to the comments of David, Núria, and all of you, and to congratulate the speakers for the presentations, because I think that the level of precision and granularity and the strategies for monitoring of all these diseases, I think is at the level that wasn't difficult to think 5 years ago, for instance. And I think that this is really encouraging in regarding to the new possibilities to understand and to make interventions and to deal with the brain, also in optimizing resilience and the ability of brain to cope with the disease, but also in the challenge to anticipate the disease and also to act as soon as possible. No? And I think that it has been really refreshing and very well prepared presentations at different level of maturity of the ideas, but really, I mean, sometimes you say, no, I was feeling more envy than having the possibility to say or to suggest, because they were very well presented and introduced. So congratulations to all the panelists.
Also from my side, so congratulations to all the teams. Many of them are known to the IT Health Network. But I listened to some new pitches that were also interesting, and I'll concur on the idea that Nadia mentioned in these events is not only the importance of the prize itself or the discussions with us, the panels, it's many times the interaction among peers, and it's not just competitors, but if we are in this phase of scaling, and especially in this field of mental health that has such a great potential in the next years, it's important to identify any peer that could really bring value to the different propositions, and definitely it's not just corporates who will facilitate the road to market, but many times it will be these complementary propositions. So I completely concur that these kind of events can facilitate that action, and I look forward to see what comes next. No?
Excellent. Well, next comes the results.